All right, welcome back, everybody. Big Dog Brett and Dean Legge from Dog Post. Welcome you guys back to a very special edition. Uh, we've got a lot to talk about today. I really want to say I appreciate Dean coming on the show. Probably one of the busiest people I know in the industry. He's all over the place. If you guys want the latest information about what's going on with college football, especially the Georgia Bulldogs, go over and check out Dog Post. Go follow Dean on Twitter. These guys cover so much information I can't even keep up with it. So appreciate you being here, Dean.
You got it, man.
So today we're going to be kind of going over some of the college football playoff scenarios, some of the stuff that could happen in the SEC championship game. Um, we'll talk about the Heisman a little bit, as well as other teams around the league and how their gameplay could potentially impact college football playoff scenarios, especially with some teams not playing in division championships and some teams that could potentially win theirs. So we'll see how that plays out. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and lay out for you guys who we have listed as the top. We'll just say the top 10 teams. And I'll throw up a picture here in just a second. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU. All four of these teams are ranked in the top four positions as they should be. All four of these teams are 10-0. Most of these teams are going to, well, at least one of these teams should end the division undefeated. One of these other teams should end their season, normal season undefeated. And TCU also has the potential of doing it. So we'll get into that. Tennessee comes in at number 5 with 9-1. LSU number 6, believe it or not, with an 8-2. Even though they barely squeaked by last week, they're still ranked number 6. USC ranked at number 7 at a 9-1. Alabama at number 8 at 8-2. Even though everybody thinks Alabama's falling off a cliff, they're still in the top 10, guys. So we can't count them out. We can't say that this is just a complete, detrimental destruction of their football team. They're still a top 10 team. Clemson at number 9 and Utah at number 10. And I really don't think much after that really counts as far as the college football playoff goes. So without further ado, Dean, can I get your opinion on what you think about the current shakeup there in the top 10 or even top 5 list?
It's better than it was. The first week didn't make a lot of sense. I think you and I were talking off the air about SC and LSU kind of the that one is in front of the other, and you know I would say all of it will work itself out, but the problem is someone's going to have to be the three and the four. Everyone has penciled Georgia in as one of the four, maybe not number one, and then we know almost certainly the winner of Ohio State, Michigan will be in there as well. I think the question remains: what happens to the loser of Ohio State, Michigan? Does TCU enter the postseason undefeated? How much will it affect Tennessee not to play on Championship Saturday? That will matter a lot. Can LSU beat Georgia? Because LSU cannot lose any of the next three games they've got. With SC, will they have a foe in the Pac-12 championship game if they get there? That will be enough to leapfrog some of these teams. Alabama, I just don't see how they get in. I was trying to say last week, Clemson still has a sliver of hope, but Brett, there's no one that they're going to need a real big pole vault to jump over, and not everybody else. And I think Utah, I think it's too late. So I think really the discussion is of these six teams, as I'm about to name them: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas Christian, Tennessee, and USC, because the LSU getting in there is not impossible, but it's a swing. It's a bit of a stretch. And then as it relates to Alabama, that's not going to happen. Clemson still has a path, but
Diluted.
they need some disruption. And then Utah beyond, it's not going to happen. There maybe North Carolina if really all sorts of damage occurs, because if you play on championship Saturday, you have the ability to jump up. Georgia was the six in 2017. Now they were playing number two, and other folks in front of them were going to lose. So that was a zero sum win for Georgia in 2017. But for Tennessee, the biggest nerve wracking thing for me, if I were a ball, I'd be very nervous that I'm not playing on that Saturday, because folks will make up any excuse not to put you in if you're not a conference champion, unless unless you're Alabama or Georgia.
Well, I completely agree. I also think that there is a huge part that people kind of overlook. I think that yeah, Tennessee is ranked number 6, but I feel like they would get more credit if their defense had been a lot better throughout the season. Not that they have a bad defense. I'm not saying that, but everybody really circles that Alabama game where they allowed 49 points. Uh, they've had times when they've played really good on defense. They've had times when they played not so well. I'm not saying they have a terrible defense as far as the scoreboard goes, but they allowed 33 on Florida. I feel like if they had that same kind of defense that Georgia has, where 10, 11, 12 points a game across the board, they would get a little more of a nudge in the right direction.
Well,
Missing
they would be the number one team in the country. I mean, if they had Georgia's defense, they wouldn't have lost.
right,
And but you know, Georgia doesn't have Tennessee's offense. That's not the style they play. So really, I think what's concerning to me, generally speaking, about the college football playoff is are we is this question: Are we going to put the best four teams in there, or are we going to put the most deserving? Comma, and is that determination going to be changed every single year? Because if this is about the best four teams, Tennessee very well could be one of the best four teams. If this is about the most deserving so called teams, you're going to have a very different college football in the future because there's no reason to play in the SEC if this is about deserving. If it's
yeah,
about deserving, then that only means conference champions. And I would argue that Tennessee would beat Texas Christian. Of course, we don't know that, but I would argue that they have better wins. They're TCU's not lost, but if they do, Tennessee would have a better loss. So, or if you want to compare Michigan to Tennessee or Ohio State, I mean, which of them has a top 10 win? I don't think either of them do. So Tennessee does. They have two of them, and that's not nothing.
I think the closest we have is that they both played Penn State
Penn State, yeah.
earlier in the season when they were better. Ohio State kicked off the season with Notre Dame when Notre Dame was ranked number 5, but Notre Dame's number 18 now. So I
And
feel like
and that was not a bad win. I mean, I
no,
think
no,
folks want to nitpick anything when they're ready to push a team down. In my view, Georgia and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. They're not overly far apart from one another. I would take Georgia narrowly in that situation. I think the odds makers would put them narrowly in front. But that doesn't mean Ohio State can't lose. And same thing with Georgia. I think the problem for Ohio State, if you want to call it that, is the type of football they play versus the type of football that Michigan plays. That might be a tricky thing. And folks were worried about Tennessee scoring a bunch on Georgia, and as it turns out, the problem for Tennessee was the Georgia defense. So
well,
I'm glad it's not just two teams anymore, but at the same time, um, that first week's rankings really freaked me out. And I'll tell you right now, just from my view, that NC State is still ranked. I know it doesn't matter, but that NC State is ranked 24th after losing to Boston College at home. That makes
that
no sense to me.
that dumbfounds me. I think Boston College was like 1-6 or 1-7 or something at that point.
They were
Absolutely
2-7 coming into that
2-7.
game, and it's just
Terrible.
not. It's just not. There's no way we can justify that. Now, Marshall beat Notre Dame and all that, but NC State's got three losses, and that's just a straight up bad ranking.
Yeah, that's
Put
that
somebody else in there.
to give people an idea of how bad Boston College is, the SEC people. Um, Vanderbilt is 4-6 in the SEC conference, and we all rag on how bad Vanderbilt is. Well, imagine being 2-7 in a much less powerful conference. We'll say that.
Yeah, they're
I do
bad.
Yeah, I do want to point out a couple of things here. I kind of keep a close eye on Iowa, and I
Okay.
like Iowa. It's a good football team. I love the fact that they turn around and they wave at the Children's Hospital that's at the corner of their stadium. I think it's a classy thing. I think it's one of the things that will live on in infamy in college football. The Iowa has already played Ohio State and Michigan. Now, Michigan absolutely put it on Iowa compared to what Iowa had done earlier in the season. And then Ohio State comes out and doubles up on the score. Iowa has an incredible defense. The only two teams that have scored more than 13 points all season against Iowa was Ohio State and Michigan. Nobody scored more than 13. Nobody. Then Michigan comes out and puts 27 on them. And then Ohio State comes out and puts on 54.
Hmm.
So to me, I measure a lot of things in how good are you compared to how Iowa's defense is. And in that conference, they tend to have one of the better defenses. These guys come out and absolutely demolished them. So for people that are saying that this is a weaker conference, I get that, but you also have to have a benchmark. And to me, that benchmark is pretty strong. Those teams are really good. So if people think you're just going to roll in there and roll over Ohio or roll over Michigan, you may want to dig into that a little bit more.
The ability to score from Ohio State is scary for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we've been going there for a few minutes. I know you've got something else going on, and I wanted you to talk about it. I can't possibly hold all this information, but you guys have a rather reputable young man that you guys have talked into hanging around with you for a little while. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Talked into, yes. So we've got an event and we're running out of space. I appreciate you letting me talk about it just for a second. We're running out of space. In fact, when we're broadcasting this, I don't know, but Keely Ringo is going to be at Red Zone in Athens, which is downtown on Clayton Street, Sunday, coming up Sunday. There are a very limited amount of tickets available. Uh, and like I said, they could be gone by the time we're watching this. I doubt it. But um, Keely will be there, and you can get one photo, three signatures, and you get the book all for the ticket cost. I think it's a cool event. And we're going to get folks in there, and they're going to have the ability to meet. I was talking with somebody last night about it. Meet someone who made as consequential a play as anyone in Georgia history, not named Lindsey Scott.
Right.
And it's a good question as to which of those plays was bigger. I guess I would still argue Lindsey Scott, but that's a good question. And I think for Keely, the rest of his life, he will be known for that thing. Now, I hope he has bigger moments in his life than that personally. And I hope that whether that's professionally or personally, but it is something that people will always remember. I'm sure he might get annoyed with that at some stage, but not this Sunday at the Red Zone.
So
Yeah.
I think that as far as being a college football fan, and I've been around for a few years, getting the go ahead touchdown in the national championship game was exciting, but I was still extraordinarily nervous. We have been in that place before. Alabama has the ball, they're coming down the field. The only thing that was more exciting than watching him cross the goal line and put those points on the board was the moment that he actually caught the ball. Those two moments for me were the most exciting moments I've ever had in college football. I watch other teams play. I watch the ending of other games. I get excited. I'm animated. But whenever Keeley caught that ball, it it was everything college football should be about. You get an opportunity to meet this guy, and I'm telling you right now, if you don't go meet Keeley when you have the opportunity, and I mean that, you likely are not going to get very many more opportunities in the future. This guy is going to be
It's
an
gonna be
NFL
tough.
star.
Yeah.
He's going to be all over the country. He's going to be living in $1 million houses. Go meet this guy while you have a chance. He's not going to be rubbing elbows with me most likely in the future. We don't travel in the same circles. So
Well,
go
I
down
think
there.
the question is, Well, I mean, logistically speaking, as it relates to, I'm very happy that we got it worked out with him and his folks at CAA. But it wasn't. I mean, it was complicated to do only because we kind of were running out of time. He didn't really want to do it during the season, which I
Right.
understand.
Oh
And
yeah.
then now we're coming up to playoff SEC championship finals and playoffs. December just wasn't so. And I don't know what his schedule will be in the spring. He is certainly not saying anything to me, but I would say it would be a pretty high chance that he's not going to be at Georgia next year. He's probably a top 50 draft pick. So he'll have his opportunity to really. He needs to move forward with his profession, but I was just thinking about the national championships over the last decade, and that was an amazing moment in college football. The Tua Tagovailoa throw to, I can't remember his name, from Louisiana that played at Alabama to
I
beat
blocked it out
Georgia.
too. I blocked out that moment too.
He was a outstanding receiver. And then,
Devonta Smith.
Clemson Smith, yeah, and then Clemson winning on the last play of the game. I think one of the crazier endings was Auburn, Florida State, and that if you remember that last minute or two, whatever it was, but
Yep.
it's hard to think of a moment in college football history, SC and Texas perhaps, where you have two of the sports giants coming down to the last play of the game. You would not confuse Auburn with being a giant, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. When you cannot compare Auburn and Alabama, so um, I think it was it is. I still see Lindsey some. I see Buck Belue all the time, and you know, for I'm and now we're kind of sidetracked on the Keely thing, but it's an amazing moment, you know, that he had there. And when he high pointed that ball, Kirby was going bonkers.
Yeah, we still don't even get down.
Well, I was right there. I was literally, I think maybe in terms of the way the crow flies, I might have been 15 feet, but
Oh,
with it was right there, right? But the problem was that the long story short is Ben Watson was so excited. David Pollock and Ben Watson were right behind me, and Ben Watson could not have been more excited. And he jumped up and out towards the field. And so several of my images are blocked because of Ben Watson's Air Force Ones are in the way. But I
still got
got
it still has to be an amazing picture though. That
well,
excitement
it
in that
was.
moment.
He was so excited, and people were very emotional. And the next time Georgia wins the national championship, it won't be the same way. I talked with Jeff Foxworthy about that a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that explosion of emotion is something that everyone experienced. My in-laws are Clemson people, and when that happened for them in 16, that was an amazing moment for that program. And I think the next time that it happens for Georgia, it won't be the same. It won't be the same, and that's why I wanted to give folks the ability to meet Keely. It's really limited, like, we don't have a lot of people, and we did that on purpose because I didn't want it to be crazy. But anyway, we can talk about something else. But that will be Sunday.
Well, like I said, I've been trying to chase down Herschel Walker and Vince Dooley's signatures for years. I'm just telling you, if you don't get his signature, you're gonna wish you had. Well, appreciate him for joining up with you guys and putting that out there
Yeah.
for all the Dog Nation fans and all the Dog Post fans and all of my viewers. I won't call them fans, but appreciate that. Some people that watch me are not fans. Some people watch me to
I
see if
know
I'm
how
going to
that
go to state.
goes. I know how that goes. It's so funny.
So a couple of more things here. Um, Something I'd heard you guys talk about previously, and I wanted to touch base on it. Maybe some people didn't catch that. In one of your shows, they're talking about potentially changing. Not they. It is
Right.
possible that they change. Let me
Right.
correct myself. That they may move a very specific game. Uh, you kind of dove into it. So if you would give me your take on that again.
Well, unfortunately, I'm a bit of a TV nerd as it relates to ratings and rankings and all these things. And with Disney getting control, of the SEC, the rights for SEC home football games, this is the last year where CBS could have grabbed Georgia Tech, and that was a game that was played on CBS every other year for a long time because Alabama Auburn was the week before. The problem now is that there are so many windows of opportunity to put games on, and ABC and ESPN, which is under the Disney umbrella, they're going to want to put big brands on when they can. That's not all slammed on a Saturday, a holiday weekend Saturday. I don't think I've not been told this, but I don't think it's out of the question that Georgia and Georgia Tech be part of a double or triple header on Friday that would involve Georgia Tech, Florida State, and North Carolina State. These are all possibilities as we move forward because Nebraska Colorado, which doesn't exist anymore, that used to be a Friday game. And what Disney's done is they've stuck like UCF against Memphis on Fridays. They want big games. They want big names. They don't have the rights to Ohio State and Michigan. They won't have that again. And if you can take a particular game like Tech Georgia and put it on a Friday and condition the audience and let them know every single year you're going to see the Dogs, Gators, and Knowles on Friday after Thanksgiving, they'll get used to it and it will be appointment television. What we don't know is if that will actually happen. I do think that because of the way that the SEC is moving with 9 games, you could see a scenario where the league wants Georgia Tennessee at the end as a concluding game, which would push Georgia Tech to the start of the season. You could also see a scenario where Georgia and Tennessee don't play every year. Um, so right now, my suspicion is that Tech Georgia will be at the end of the year for a significant amount of time, and that it is not out of the realm of possibility at all that because of Friday becoming a more important date, that you settle on Tech Georgia at 3:30 or noon in Athens or Atlanta, and you'd know that in March. But we'll see. I mean, Auburn, Alabama will never get played on a Friday again. I don't think, and because of the brand that is Georgia and the throwaway nature in TV terms of Georgia Tech, they want to maximize the ability to put Georgia on television. And now that they've got control of both the ACC and the SEC, they can do that with Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia, and Georgia Tech. Clemson and Carolina played on Thursdays for decades. Georgia and Tech played on Thanksgiving at times. People forget that. So this is something that I would watch. My friends in television are trying to maximize their investment, and they want to get Florida back into the national ethos. And one way to do that is put it on Friday. I think Tech Georgia is a logical next step, but we'll just see.
All right, two more things I want to talk about, and then we won't hold you hostage any longer.
Okay.
Uh, UGA versus LSU in the SEC championship game. I want to get your thoughts on it. I've got my own thoughts. I'll give you mine real quick, and then you can dismantle my way of thinking. Um,
Dismantle.
yeah, I don't I don't see LSU as a credible threat here. I don't think it's a team that we should overlook, but I don't see them as a credible threat, especially after their performance at Arkansas. I don't think Alabama is as good as they have been in years past. Um, I wasn't particularly impressed with their performance against Tennessee or Auburn. And of course, they lost to Florida State at the beginning of the season. Florida State may end up being better than we thought, but I mean, it just kind of seems like a middle of the road caliber team at this point. This doesn't seem like an SEC champion caliber team.
Well, they won the right game, and if you're going to go into a season You got to win the right games and lose the right games. And they lost a game to Tennessee that at the end of the day does not matter. It's turning
Yep.
out. I mean, they got absolutely blown out at home, and it doesn't matter. They won the game they had to win. Georgia won the game it had to win against Tennessee. Tennessee lost the game it couldn't. And I think it's going to be really tough for LSU to beat Georgia for a lot of different reasons. Georgia's the better team. B, LSU, for all the kids they've got, they have been very up and down at times. I expected them to struggle against Arkansas, and they did. But like you pointed out, I mean, the Auburn game, the Tennessee game, the Arkansas game, Georgia doesn't do a lot of up and down. You're going to have to beat them for 60 minutes. Georgia's clearly the better team. I would take Georgia. They're also a 15.5 point favorite, which is not
Huge.
insignificant. Yeah, it's a
That's
lot.
huge.
If they were a 7 point favorite, that would be a lot. They're a 15.5 point favorite.
And you can say to a point that this is essentially going to be a home game for Georgia. I know
It
Georgia
will
hasn't
be.
had all of the luck in the world in Atlanta, but this is a very short bus ride for the Dogs.
They just beat Oregon by a million. So
Yeah, that's true.
uh,
That's true.
beat Oregon, beat Cincinnati. I mean, like, people do hang on to the losses a little bit more, it seems like. But if you're playing in Atlanta, you're playing in a big game, and that means you're more likely to lose that than playing even on the road in the SEC. So,
And
um,
when I go back and I look at, and I'm a stats guy, I love digging into the numbers. When I look at JT Daniels, here we go, Jaden Daniels, uh,
right,
the guy has pretty good numbers. I mean, he's a pretty competent quarterback as far as
he is.
statistically speaking. But when you look at how he performed against Arkansas, it was not great. He is a running quarterback to an extent, but in the Arkansas game, he only averaged half a yard a carry. He was 8 for 15. They
Y-
don't
y-
LSU
You,
only averaged 3.9 yards a carry. They threw pretty decent. They threw for 10.9, but essentially it almost looks like if you just stop the run against these guys, they fold up a lot like what happened in the Tennessee game. So
well, if you can't run in this league, you're going to be in real trouble. And Mississippi State saw that, Tennessee saw that, and the number one team you don't want to deal with when you say, "Oh, we got to run," is Georgia, and it's complicated. But if you there just Georgia just does not stop. I mean, it's like water; it's going to find where it wants to go. You're not going to be able to dam it up, and they are real. They are real trouble. And it doesn't matter if I'm talking about C.J. Stroud or Jalen Daniels or Hendon Hooker. You're going to have to be really good, and Hendon Hooker, I think, is pretty good. And so you're going to have to be really good to beat them. I will stop talking after I say this. These are the people that have beaten Georgia in football at quarterback lately. Tua, Jalen Hurts, combination of those two in 2018. Joe Burrow twice, uh, Mac Jones, um,
Bryce Young one time.
Bryce Young. The only outlier is the South Carolina game in 19. So if you don't have an exceptional quarterback, forget it. And I don't know if the LSU quarterback is exceptional. CJ Stroud is. CJ
Yeah.
Stroud is, and Hendon Hooker is. So it's just a matter of, DJ was not. And just because you have one doesn't mean you will win. But anyway, I think it's going to be real tough for LSU, personally.
So just so everybody knows, because I'm that guy. Stetson Bennett has more passing yards than CJ Stroud. He has a higher completion percentage.
But is he throwing touchdowns in the fourth quarter during blowouts? Because that's what CJ Stroud has done of late.
Yeah, I mean when you're throwing multiple touchdowns in big blowout games, I mean, it makes a big difference. What I will tell you is that Stetson Bennett has thrown for 14 touchdowns all season, but I have seen some of the prettiest passes he's ever thrown in the past 2 or 3 games. So
Ohio State, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but Ohio State had better be able to run against Georgia. And if they don't, like they couldn't against Northwestern, they're going to have a hard time.
And
So
they're
it's about running the football.
they have Mayan Williams, who is a pretty competent running back. He's 783 yards right now on the season, averaging 6.7 a carry. Georgia really spreads it around between Dejon, Kenny, Kendall, and Branson.
Right.
But people are still forgetting that Stetson Bennett is a very competent on his feet kind of guy. He showed
He's
off a
an
little bit in the
exceptional
Mississippi State
runner.
games. Yeah, he showed off a little bit in the Mississippi State game, but people forget he's really, really good. And I don't know that Ohio State would be able to deal with that.
We'll see.
All right, last thing, and I think this is going to be a huge factor moving forward, and that's why I bring it up. What do you think is going to happen whenever the transfer portal opens up here pretty soon?
At Georgia
No,
specifically,
no, no. In college football in general, what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think is going to be moving from where, and who do you think is going to absorb that talent?
quarterbacks certainly are the ones that move around. I don't know if you'll see that at Georgia or not, but um, we didn't see much of that last year at Georgia. In fact, we didn't see any. We saw Nick take advantage of it to some degree at Alabama. It's challenging because I can't read the future on these matters. Um, when I look at let me just look at the board for a second here. I mean, there are some guys at Georgia who are not playing who could play elsewhere. So you could see some guys leave Georgia. I don't know if you'll see Georgia bring someone in. There's been one person that I will be tracking um, that Georgia could bring in, but it's so early. I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable even saying that out loud. So um, I think if you're the Dogs, you're going to lose Kenny McIntosh, Stetson Bennett, Kyrus Jackson, Warren Erickson, Trammell, Robert Beal, Nolan Smith, Christopher Smith, and Jack Penesley. Uh, you're you only have 10 seniors on this team by the scholarship chart. So I don't know that they're really in trouble on that front, but it is something to watch globally. I think Florida is going to have to figure out their situation at quarterback. Clemson might have to figure out their situation at quarterback. Alabama is going to have to do some work, and maybe in the transfer portal. I'm not sure, but there's work to be done there for sure. To me,
I think there's again, we're reading the future, we're reading the tea leaves here as best we can. One of the things that I want to kind of point out is that I think that there's going to be some pretty major fallout from the Texas A&M
oh,
disaster.
you're talking about Texas A&M. Got
Yeah,
it. I didn't even think about that. I think they should fire Jimbo. I think it's that simple.
I don't know. I don't know how they've held on to him for this long, other than they're
I
trying to
mean, it's all
trying to
there is
mine
to
the
it.
gold. Yeah,
You bring him in and say, "Hey, listen, do you want to do this or not? If you don't really want to do this, let's reach an agreement. We can reach an agreement for 30 or 40 million dollars, and let us move on because this is not working. We're 3-6. Texas A&M. That's
you're not
certainly
going
a
bowling at this point. I mean,
Oh, they're gonna have to string together. Can they go to a bowl to have 7 losses? They'd have to beat LSU,
they'd
which
have to
they're
beat
not going to
LSU.
do. I mean, so no, look, it's not working. And when it's not working, it doesn't suddenly get better. The only person that it turned around for, and it wasn't this bad, it wasn't even close to this bad. I mean, Clemson was not that far from running Dabo Swinney off in 2012, 13, 11 for sure.
Yeah.
And he made some changes, but will Jimbo do that? I don't know. And that doesn't mean that you're going to fix it. Usually, it doesn't get fixed. Usually,
So yeah. So there's some things here that I've been doing, just kind of looking the timeline here. If you look at Texas A&M and M and their 2022 class, I really, really wanted a guy by the name of Shamar Stewart. He's a D-line guy. He was the number one in the state of Florida. He was number 3 nationally, 5-star, off the charts, and Georgia was on his list. And we didn't quite get him. There was another guy by the name of where's it at here? LT Overton. He was number
Well,
3 in the state
for
of
sure.
Georgia, number
Yeah.
14 nationally, defensive line guy, huge athletic ability. He goes to Texas A&M over Georgia. So I you got to have the D line guys in this industry. I feel like if we went after those two guys and just got those two guys off of that roster, I think it would be an incredible benefit to the Dogs.
Well, I
And
mean,
I think you're gonna see that the transfer portal is gonna crash with all of those A&M players running to it as soon as they get
and it might, but these are the rules now, and guys can leave, and it was not that way when I was playing, and that was a challenge. You had to work it out with the coach and do all the sorts of stuff, but for A&M, I mean, they need to take they need to the one of the last things they need to worry about is the portal. I mean, they need to get the guy who's running their program. They need to get the right person, and Jimbo's not it right now.
no.
He's just not.
Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over today. Was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I appreciate you let me come on and everybody that the event with Keely is going to run out. We will run out of spots. I know where we're at here, and it's not many. So take advantage of it while you can. And I appreciate you letting me come on and talk about all this football, and hopefully we can do it sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Loving having you on. You really have some great perspective on college football, so we really love having you on. Again, guys, just so you know, the date is November 20th. That's going to be at Red Zone in Athens, 186 East Clayton Street. It's easy to find. You can ask anybody in Athens where Red Zone is. They'll either point you at the stadium or point you to the store. It's it's a really nice. I won't say cozy, but it is a very uh, warm
It's
feeling
not a
place.
warehouse.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not
the
huge.
bookstore. Right.
Yeah.
This is a family owned, locally owned place. So
And the
keep
people
that in mind.
and the people that run that place are super nice. Everybody in
Yeah,
there is super nice. There's tons of other Georgia memorabilia in there. I promise you,
there
if
is.
you just go visit Red Zone on its own, you won't be disappointed. So, and then the fact you can get to hang out with Keely, just kind of tops the chart. Go ahead and if do you guys still have any copies of Dog Instruction? I got mine, but do you guys have any left?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this. If you go to the event, you get a copy, and so that's something to beware of. That's a very good value for sure. So, yes, there are still some available, and they will be at the book signing. And we're very excited about it. I just got the shipment in today for the signings for Sunday.
Well, guys, that's all we have for today. Appreciate you guys being on. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day. God bless. Go Dog.